I am Sherry Griffith, your virtual specialist for middle grades health and physical education. In this webinar series, we will be focusing on strategies for accommodating learners. The purpose of this webinar series is to help educators to accommodate learners' differences in needs while facilitating instruction. This includes using effective strategies and resources during instructional planning, using relevant research-based instructional strategies to engage students and to facilitate the students' acquisition of key knowledge and skills, to provide appropriate content for developing skills and for differentiating instruction which challenges and supports each student's learning, and for creating a student-centered academic environment in which teaching and learning occur at high levels and students are self-directed learners. In this session, we will be focusing on assessment ideas for middle school students in the PE classroom that help students to assess a variety of motor skills, movement patterns, and movement combinations in multiple activity categories, as well as skills that help students to assess themselves and others. We will be using effective strategies and resources to help students assess the performance of specific skills, such as throwing, catching, striking, shooting, passing, and utilizing various body parts or implements. We will be elaborating upon instructional strategies that help students to use knowledge of concepts, principles, strategies, and tactics related to movement and performance to assess movements and strategies necessary for physical performance, to help students to critique self and or others in the performance of specific skills, and to support students to be able to provide suggestions for improving student performance while varying trajectories, changing speeds, direction, and applying basic strategies and motor skill techniques for offense and defense in small-sided gameplay. We will also be demonstrating use of appropriate content for helping students to challenge themselves by setting goals, to track activity and progress, to reflect upon their own understanding, and for teacher observation. My top 5 assessment ideas are not necessarily in any order, but aim to help as effective strategies for high levels of teaching and learning in the PE classroom, and to facilitate a student-centered academic learning environment which supports self-directed learners.
Top 5. Top 5. Top 5. Top 5. Top 5.
Number 5 on the list of my top 5 assessment ideas includes project-based learning choice boards. Project-based learning strategies are an effective tool to incorporate during your instructional planning for assessing students. When planning an entire unit of instruction, the teacher should provide appropriate content for developing skills and for differentiating instruction. The teacher should plan to measure students formatively every day to check students' progress along the way. Teacher observation, checking, allowing students to measure themselves or one another, multiple choice poll questions to reflect on their performance, and other ways to provide, discuss, or review feedback about student performance and understanding are a few ways that teachers formatively assess students throughout a unit. While planning the end of the unit, the teacher may plan a summative assessment for students to perform, such as fitness tests, skills tests, and other performance-based assessments to measure students' improvement over time, or for students to demonstrate what they have learned or what they can perform by the end of a unit. Project-based learning choice boards are student-centered assessments that empower students to create, which is considered a high level of student learning according to Marzano. Project-based learning assessments are not completed in one day. Students acquire the skills to complete the assessment throughout the unit, and the instructor plans accordingly to meet the needs and differences of learners. Once the teacher has facilitated the student's acquisition of key knowledge and skills, the teacher can introduce an engaging scenario to their students. The engaging scenario on the screen comes in the form of a choice board and includes a situation and a challenge for students to complete. In this engaging scenario, students play the role of new PE teachers. Their situation is that the new teachers want to make up a game or dance to demonstrate for their students. The challenge in this engaging scenario is to successfully create a movement sequence using the choice board activity challenge. In addition to having a situation and a challenge, the students have a product or performance for an audience that will be assessed. The product or performance to be assessed in this engaging scenario is the demonstration for the student audience. The parts of the engaging scenario is identifiable by the acronym SCRAP: Situation, Challenge, Roles, Audience, and Product or Performance. The project-based learning choice board should be created during the instructional planning of a unit to serve as the summative assessment at the end of the unit to assess students' acquisition of key knowledge and skills, and is designed to engage students in a student-centered academic environment so that high levels of teaching and learning can occur. Number 4 on the list of my top 5 assessment ideas includes teacher-made rubrics, which are authentic assessment tools. Authentic assessment tools are relevantly and appropriately designed to accommodate learners' needs and differences, and designed to facilitate the student's acquisition of key knowledge and skills. Authentic assessment tools are an effective strategy and an appropriate resource for assessing the performance of specific skills such as throwing, catching, striking, shooting, passing, and or utilizing various body parts or implements. The teacher-made rubric on the screen is a resource for facilitating a softball unit. The instructor used criterion categories relevant to the motor skills, movement patterns, and the movement combinations necessary for a successful student performance in softball. The instructor also used appropriate student responsibilities for demonstrating key knowledge and skills. This research-based assessment strategy places the assessment in the forefront of differentiated instruction and engages students to assess themselves or their peers as an instructional activity. The teacher's role is to facilitate a learning environment in which the students are able to exhibit responsible personal behavior as they apply their knowledge of the movement and performance criteria to be assessed while using the assessment tool provided by their instructor. Teacher-made rubrics help students to assess a variety of motor skills, movement patterns, and movement combinations in multiple activity categories, as well as skills that help students to assess themselves and others as self-directed learners. Whether it be the teacher who is conducting the assessment of a large group or a small group, or the student who's conducting a peer assessment or a self-assessment, authentic assessment tools help to facilitate a student-centered academic environment in which teaching and learning occur at high levels. Please visit the Georgia Department of Education community website at community.gadoe.org for more helpful tips to collaborate, connect, share thoughts, or resources for teachers and administrators. Thank you for viewing, and we hope you enjoyed our webinar.